You are listening to an exclusive interview on Bass Musician Magazine. The interview starts now.
Hey everybody, this is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with the bassist for the Gary Clark Jr. Band, John Bradley.
Hi everybody.
So starting from the beginning, Johnny, we always like to find out about your history. How did you get started in music and on bass?
Two parts to that question. I think when I was maybe in the second grade, I took my guitar to school and I became that guy. And I didn't realize it at the time. And several times throughout my career, I've tried to stop and teach school, praise real estate, swung a hammer on more than one occasion. I didn't realize how if I had just leaned into what it was that was in front of me, I probably could have saved a lot of time in getting to where I was going. You know, if I could have just gotten out of my own way and be who it was that I was supposed to be. But we'll get more to that later.
There we go.
Bass. I had a buddy in a 50s band. You know, I grew up playing guitar. He did like car shows and stuff. And they needed a bass player. I went and I think I did it once or twice, and I decided if I was going to do this, I wanted to get a big bass. And at the time, I was counselor at a university, and I wanted to get into upright bass. I'm thinking this must be early 90s, and the swing thing was happening. I practiced, 8 hours a day, crazy glue on my calluses to keep things together, the whole 9 yards. Once I started doing that and playing upright bass, I got a job playing about 5 nights a week, and it's run away with me.
Gotcha.
It's run away with me.
Now, do you still alternate between upright and electric, or have you shifted more towards electric?
Well, in Gary's band, the nature of the beast is sort of required the right tool for the job, which in my case is an upright bass. I think my first electric bass was a 68 Telecaster bass. And I am a big fan of people like George Porter Jr. and Melvin Dunlop. And well, Melvin Dunlop and Keith Ferguson were probably the big influences when I started playing electric bass and trying to apply what I was listening to on records. So when I sat down with electric bass, that's what I was going for. So that's the bass I got. And at the time, it wasn't nearly as expensive as it is now. They're getting kind of hard to come by.
Absolutely. And are you pretty much self-taught?
Yes. Yeah, I'm pretty much self-taught. I've gotten to sit with a lot of my bass heroes and a lot of masters, and just sort of been around when they were holding on to basses, and just sort of got to watch how do you stand with a bass? How do you what is the process like? I mean, being able to sit down and listen to music and learn the notes and stuff, but how to relate to the other people on stage, how to respond them, and to let them know that you are hearing what they're doing and supporting what they're doing. In my idea of what bass is, it's often a supportive role.
Well, and definitely it's got so many dimensions. This is why we love bass so much, because you've got your melodic component, you've got your percussive component, you have the power to color the notes so that when they are doing one thing, if you're doing something just slightly different with the bass, it gives it a whole different feel. And this is, I think, the part that's most memorable to so many of us when we listen to music.
Yes, absolutely. With the people that I've gotten to watch, a lot of them speak about intention, and I think you just defined it really well. All the different things intention can do when you pick up a note and when you pick up a bass and play a note.
Sure. And so many times it's even the spaces between the notes, as we've said so many times, it's leaving that gap and then accentuating that particular point. Now, taking us a little farther forward with Gary Clark, how long have you been playing with Gary?
I've been in Gary's band now. I think we're in our 9th year. Yeah.
And you guys are currently, this is kind of mid-tour, so we're catching you in a little recess. Started in May, and it's going to be going on strong till September.
Yes, we're home for another 3 days, and then we leave for Hawaii and Japan until the end of the month. And we have time to come home and clean clothes and repack, and I think Lollapalooza will start off a 9-week venture.
Mm-hmm. Well, and all of this is coming hot on the trail of the recent release, This Land?
Yes, yeah, exactly. And we've done a lot of our promo for the show, our TV stuff. Mm-hmm. Most of that for the year is behind us. So we're into a phase where the band will now take the songs. We all have this common language that we're going to speak, and what are we going to do with it? We're going to take it to different places, on the road. We don't. There's not a need to showcase the record as much as it is let that thing soak into the repertoire and the extra, the layer of what the band is. In communications, they call it the theory of non-summativity. Mm-hmm. It's a big word, but it's really a pretty easy concept. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's the theory of non-summativity. And I think that things like components like new band members, we have a new keyboard player, John Dees, that's joined since this record came out. Elements, personalities, new material, all of those things are going to add to that collective whole.
Gotcha.
And this tour will be real reflective of where we are today.
From what I've been listening a little bit to Gary's music, and it's definitely got a very strong social message in so many instances.
Oh, good. Well, I would hope so. That's one of my favorite parts of music. I think when songs are good and music is good, everyone can get something from it. Mm-hmm. And to be able to find something to connect to in the music, whether it's unrequited love or social and political discord, whatever it could be, it can be expressed in a way that everyone can relate to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I
think Gary's done that well.
It's such a powerful tool to the point where if you look back historically, it's often been something that people in power even would try to stifle because they didn't like what the musicians were saying. You think back to
sure.
like Joan Baez and Bob Dylan.
Absolutely.
And some of the early Creedence stuff. It was speaking up and saying, hey, this is just not right.
Exactly. I love that you went that far back. When I was thinking about that same thing earlier today, and I was thinking about like Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine or Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys. One of my favorites is Joe Strummer from The Clash, making statements that maybe to some people seemed liberal, but maybe when you think about them, they were progressive, and maybe progressive is a better way of framing that, because I think that things with, once you put a label on it like that, it can be perceived as a negative connotation by some people. And you still you don't want to drive everyone off by banging the drum or speaking your voice loudly. You want to be heard, and you want to be heard by everybody. So to keep themes that everyone can relate to on some level, I think is important. And I think that Gary did that with This Land. I think that record and the things that he talks about goes in a lot of different directions, and there's something in there for everybody.
Very, very cool. And of course, if people want to know where you're going to be with the tour schedule, GaryClarkJr.com is the best place to look?
Yes. Yeah. That's the best place. That's where I go.
There we go. And we would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about gear, because as of course I get easily distracted looking at the basses behind you. Tell us, how do you get your sound with your instruments?
Well, I have found that less is more. And that starts for me with guitars. I tend to like one pickup guitars. Mm-hmm. I've got a 62 P bass here. Its neck is dated 62, but the pots are 63. And here's an interesting thing about this guitar. You can see it doesn't have the finish on it anymore. But the solder joints are still intact. That means that someone took this pickguard off, probably bagged it, scrubbed the paint off, and put everything back. Now, how long ago that happened, I have no idea. I can't look at this and tell. I can tell it was probably a sunburst.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's really super dark, and it has a little bit of a sheen to it. So it's oil, if anything, on this bass. And this one has not left the house yet since I got it. I haven't been able to get up the gumption to take this as not one of the touring basses, but it's got a big neck on it, so it's kind of like swinging two bats. You know, it's really it's a good one to have here, and I can always take it if I get a call to make a record, or you know, I want to run down and do something that requires, in my mind, a vintage P bass. I got it now. This one is a 67 Coronado bass. And the thing I love about the Coronado is it's as big as the P bass or a jazz bass, but it's a short scale. And when you're looking at basses, you can tell, you know, not always by the neck or whatever, but by where the bridge is. Usually if the bridge is on the bottom of the bass or at the end of the bass, it's going to be a long scale neck because it's got to be further away from the 12th fret. And if it's a short scale, well, the bridge is going to be scooted up towards the neck a little bit because the 12th fret is the halfway spot in between the bridge and the nut.
Gotcha.
So that's just, you know, when you're looking at TV, you're like, hey, what's he playing? Or what is she playing? That way you know. The thing I like about the Coronado bass is it's completely hollow. So it'll boom like a Hofner, right? But it's a bolt-on neck. It's got that Fender bolt-on neck, so you can get the action right down on the deck. You can get that thing right. So it's laying in the cut, and you just don't have to work at all. It's nice and boomy like an upright bass, and portable like an electric. It's really the best of both worlds. I love that thing. But where I stand on stage, I'm standing behind at least one Vibra King with Gary playing it, and if that thing will feed back in the wrong environment. So a lot of times it stays here in the kitchen too.
Gotcha. So what are you playing when you're on tour? Because you've got two basses you're leaving at home.
Sure. I'm playing mid-50s P basses, or 50s-esque P basses. My favorite bass was made for me by Burley Guitars here in Austin, Texas. It's a black P bass, and it's based on the 55 era. So it's got a maple neck, and it's contoured. I've got a gold anodized pickguard, a stacked noiseless pickup from Prima pickups.
Okay.
And that's my number one bass. That's my favorite bass I've ever owned, is the Black Burley P bass. I also have one that Gary gave me that's a white 55 custom shop P bass.
Oh.
And I also had to change the pickup in that to make it the noise canceling thing. It's just, the nature of the game. A few years ago, I decided I needed to invest in a DI. What I was finding, before we had our own front of house and we had consistent representation, like that final filter of who was going to mix the band, I would hear different recordings, and sometimes the bass wasn't as full as I wanted it to be. And I needed to make things consistently bassy. Like I said, I've been really lucky to meet great players and influential players. And I feel like most of the great ones are also very accessible on a interpersonal level. Mm-hmm. And they've been really kind as far as imparting, the short route to get to, realizing your vision and stuff. And Tim LaFave is a bass player who you can catch on tour with numerous acts, and he sent me to Jack Rohn, who makes the Noble DI, which is a tube DI, and I sold 60s Fender Bassman and invested in the Noble DI, and that's been probably the smartest money that I've spent as a professional bass player.
Now I'm going to take a hop back because all of your instruments have strings. Do you have a choice in strings?
I do. I like LaBellas. I also play some guitar still. So from guitars to basses, a LaBella has an answer for every style that I need. They're very, very accessible, easy to find. They're all over online in your stores.
There you
and
go.
You can call up New York City and speak with Eric and Lorenzo Coco, and they will direct you to the right spot.
There you go. Yeah, they've been. We've talked to them, of course, a lot, especially at the NAMM shows. And well, there you go.
That's what I'm using right there.
Deep talking bass.
This is the short scale version. So this is going to go on this red bass, which I have to name. Maybe we should have people give us ideas on a name for that red bass.
There's a few people that have gone. They've kind of mimicked BB and named their basses Lucille. But
oh man, yeah. I'm not sure about that.
She doesn't seem like a Lucille.
So it's just the red. It's just a really, and I'm not sure if you can really pick this up. But I mean, it's sparkly in some places, and it's
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I think. I don't know. I'm not sure.
We'll have to see if we can't help you out with that. Well, and looking down, you mentioned the DI. Do you use an amplifier as well?
My amplifier choices have changed a lot over the years. As the band has grown and we've played bigger venues, I just bought an Aguilar amplifier. It's a giant amplifier, and my vision is for this amplifier, it's going to allow me to play more basses like the Silvertone bass, or like a Silvertone, or the hollow basses, whether it's a Silvertone, a K, a Hofner, or Ding Ding Ding, the Coronado, which is my favorite. I think they call it damping power of just like a massive amplifier like that will help keep this from feeding back. Normally I play tube amps. I love Ampegs. I've had Mesa Boogies with 6L6s in them. 6L6s was really, that was like the magic number for me. If I could get 4 or 6 6L6s and 4 or 5 knobs, I was golden. But my favorite amplifier of all times is the 63 Fender Bassman. It's usually brown, and it's got a bass instrument channel. It's none of those switches. It's just got the bass instrument channel, and it's got a presence knob on it. So if things are too flubbery and thick sounding, instead of turning up my tone control, I can dial in that presence and make things sharp instead of using a pick or something I could drop.
Oh, there you go.
Because I will.
Well, that's why you get extra picks. I mean, that's
there you go.
Easy.
Exactly. Yeah.
So any other things with your gear that give you a specific sound? You use pedals or not so much?
I don't. I've tried. Zvex gave me a Mastertron pedal. That's such an awesome name, Mastertron. And I've kept that on the board for a long time, and we just had to reconfigure. My board is actually a piece of wood. I take the pedals apart and use plumber's tape to make tabs, and I screw them onto the board. So if the board drops, things don't scatter across the stage or whatever. But anyway, I had to reconfigure it, and the Mastertron didn't make it onto the next board. So consequently, I don't use it. But now I have John Dees, who is a master of sounds and covers that with a keyboard rig. So I can get back to sticking with drummer Johnny Rattleat's foot, which is that's my favorite place to be. I talked earlier about, coming from guitar world, and really, I don't think I wouldn't feel comfortable calling myself a guitarist. I can strum and sing. When it comes to playing bass, I'm much more at home in the rhythm section than I am in the chord riff section of the band. Mm-hmm. Usually when I hear Easy and Gary playing riff stuff, I think of bass parts that go with it. I very rarely would go, oh, how does that go? And try to learn the riff. That seems, it's like we already got a guy for that. Mm-hmm. I'll do something else.
Well, and, it's just what each musician sees, how you fit in with the music.
Exactly. I mean, if Mark Evans and Cliff Williams of AC/DC felt like I did, AC/DC wouldn't sound like AC/DC.
Exactly.
Because they're just all, chugging away.
One that always comes to mind is we talk about guitar players turn basses with Paul McCartney. That you've got such lyrical approach that are lines that most people probably wouldn't have thought of. Because of his, different approach, It is, unique.
So unique. So unique. That's a completely singular cat. I mean, I think that Sir Paul is he's like an enigma. I mean, he's an exception to almost every rule I can think of when it comes to bass players or forward-thinking leaders.
Yeah.
He's just, So I hear you. And maybe the guitar player thing is part of it, but maybe it's magic in being a lefty. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, there you go.
Culmination of all those things.
So moving along, I know you guys have more tour going on till September.
Yes.
What plans are there for the future?
I really don't know. I mean, we're not if you look at our group of people on stage, we're 5 men in very different points in our man trajectory. And Gary and the music is really what brings us together as people. When it comes to like songs or the plans or anything, it's just we really hold on loosely, and there's not a lot of talking about the art or the vision either. We're just dealing with what we have in front of us. And that's as a band approaching songs and as a band approaching, the future of the band for that matter.
There you go.
Well, I expect as soon as we make plans, that's when plans will go awry.
I hear you. And so many times when you're in the middle of a tour, you've got a recent album, it's hard to look outside of anything else. However, sometimes bassists will have other projects. Do you have any other things that you've been thinking about, things you'd like to do?
Well, always. I mean, I love music. I'm a student and an enthusiast, and I like engaging with people. And music is my favorite forum for expression. I think that maybe it's ephemeral quality. There's just what there is right now. We have an idea of who we are, and we have an idea of who we want, or what we want, who we want too, probably. Who we are and what we want. And I think that those things color the things we say, and they color how we say them. But when it comes to music and playing notes, there's something that's more immediate and more impermanent and temporary. So where we are right at that moment is less confusing than the words that we can use to describe it. Hopefully that came across. That makes some sense. And to be able to go there with other people, and other people who are reciprocal and are open to sharing their interest and enthusiasm in music and expression and all those things, and the history of music and great blues, and whether you're into Texas blues or New Orleans jazz or R&B out of New York, or Jimmy Smith at the Root down in L.A. and all that stuff. I mean, there's so much of it. And to meet other people who are into that is great, but to be able to make music with them is better.
I hear you. Well, and this is coming hot on the heels. You guys had just been opening for the Rolling Stones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be around. Well, for me, to get to see Daryl Jones in real life, and to watch, how do you back up Ronnie, Keith, and Mick, and Charlie? How do you hold something that's that important and solidified in rock and roll? It's the longevity. I mean, I don't even know where to start, but to walk into that, and I say walk into that. What's he been in the band now? 20 years more. But to watch Daryl, watch those guys, and decide what to play and sort of be in the thing is very important for someone like me, because I can't listen to it and get it like I can when I see it. And, the whole, the live music thing, to watch it and hear it all go down. I mean, I love a turntable and a tube amp as much as the next guy, but boy, to be there is certainly a gift. and it's not wasted on me. I'm soaking it up like a sponge.
It's always important to continue to support live music in venues. And of course, we're always encouraging people to do that because you're right. I mean, you go back to a turntable, but nowadays it's a single download or,
Oh, yeah.
all these things.
Oh, yeah, the age of immediacy. I mean, when I was a kid, I had to save up my money and go down to the record store and wait in line with people in my neighborhood for the record to get. And like, did you get it on the first time, or did you have to wait 3 weeks for the second wave of albums to come in and then you bought yours then? Well, I remember because I was in line with blah, 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 blah. None of that. Now you got 99 cents, bam, it's mine. It's on my phone and I can listen to it in my ear pods.
There you go. Well, and there's no more sold out albums because I ran into the same thing. We'd go down to the store and you'd go, well, we're out. And you're like, well, man.
Yeah. You weren't committed. You didn't plan. You should have known that it would sell out.
I know. Well, Johnny, we appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule. Folks, of course, if you want to check out Gary Clark Jr. on tour, go to garyclarkjr.com. For more of Johnny's stuff, Instagram, Facebook, all good places to kind of keep tabs of what you're doing.
Yes. Yep, those are all great places. Coming out to the shows is the best. We're always hanging around the venue before and after, and we like hanging out and talking with everyone and comparing notes, what records people are listening to, what your favorite blues album is, all that stuff. I'm all about it.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much again, folks. You've seen him here.
Thank you, Raul.
John Bradley on Bass Musician Magazine.
Thanks for basing out with us here on bassmusicianmagazine.com.